Hello and welcome to Etude number 4, part 4, the final part. This is the final few micro studies for this etude and we're going to dive straight in. Right, main points here are guide fingers. It's going to be crucial to lift up fingers and use guide fingers, not to squeak, because we're going to be in the bass section of the guitar. There is going to be some squeaking, there's nothing you can do about it. Practice the min7b5 section as block chords first before you put in the right hand patterns. On top of that, practice the right hand patterns separately, because the second half involves a lot of different right hand patterns that change bar to bar. Melody fragments. There are 2 melody fragments here, and the intervals are based right back on the beginning melody fragment, the first melody that you hear in the top line. Left hand shifts. There is a lot of shift work here. Along with the guide fingers, you need to engage your elbow. Your elbow will help facilitate the shift up and down, and when you start to get up above 12th fret. Okay, welcome to the melody section. I'm just going to briefly talk about the 2 melodies Villa-Lobos uses in this next section of the study. Fragment 1 is slightly longer than fragment 2, and it starts at bar 38, so we get this in the bass line. So that is fragment 1. It's very distinct, you can't miss it. This is fragment 2, and here he shortens a couple of the ideas. So, apart from the first 2, everything else uses this min7b5 shape. It's a lovely, thick, creamy, juicy chord up here in this section of the guitar. The first finger tracks that bass line from the B in that shape. Prior to that, the shape is just an E7 shape, shifted up with no barre. Let's dive into microstudy number 12 to take a further look at those chords in action. Welcome to microstudy number 12. Right, we're going to kick off with that lovely open E7 chord shape, which then shifts down a semitone and then shifts up a semitone. Fingers are 1, 3 and 2. There's nothing difficult about that. The main thing for this entire section is your second finger stays on the 3rd string, and we'll be doing this as a guide. Second finger guides up to 7, and then we change the 1 and 3 fingers into this. First finger on a B, 3rd finger on an F, and second finger stays on a D, the 3rd. That repeats. He then goes down a tone and hones in on the A, to G sharp, to A, and then he moves up to the C sharp and stays there for 3 beats. And then at bar 42 he moves up into the upper regions, E, holds it, then we have a D, down a tone, semitone to C sharp, down a tone to B, back up to D, down a semitone, C sharp, down a tone to B, down a tone to A, up a minor 3rd to C natural, down to B, then a big shift down to F, then F sharp, and then G. As you can hear right on the end there, Villa-Lobos is starting to make more of the polychords, and that is this chord shape juxtaposed against the open D and B strings. Once you've got a handle on those block chords and you can play them up and down, all you need to do then is put in the right hand pattern. Develop this now because you will need it again in 10, 11 and number 12. All of them use that particular right hand thumb technique across 2 or sometimes 3 bass strings, which we will see a little bit further down. Alright, welcome to microstudy number 13. This is where things get really interesting. So we have the shortened melody fragment number 2. We have the same chord shapes, but the right hand now starts to develop. And we start to see some patterns that will come up again in the preludes and in later etudes. Villa-Lobos obviously clearly like these. So it's worth practicing now. What we'll do is we'll just go through the chord shapes quickly again. Here we go. G, F sharp, G, E7 shape, second finger guides up, B-7 flat 5, stays there for 3, down to A, down to G sharp, down, back up to A, up to C sharp for 2, and then straight up to E, E flat, C sharp, B, D, C sharp, B, A, C, B, F, F sharp, G. So nothing too difficult if you've practiced that already. Alrighty, now let's take a look at that right hand pattern. So I've separated them out as open string patterns to make it easier. Here we start at bar 46, nice and slowly. Next bar. Back to the first pattern from 46. Bar 49, next bar. Back to the pattern from bar 46. Which repeats. And repeats again, 52. Time it was for 4 beats, and then the final bar, bar 53. So once you've got all of that, you've practiced your right hand, you've practiced your left hand, the thing is then to put the two together. Welcome to microstudy number 14. We start off back where we left the last microstudy on this wonderful G chord. Back to F sharp, and then down to F natural. Villa-Lobos is heading in a certain direction. Low E. But instead of a normal E minor chord, we have this wonderful chord. So we have a first finger on a B, third finger on a D, the 7th, and then a second finger on the F sharp, the 9. That's the first chord, and then all you do, this shape, second and third fingers move up. We have a B flat and a D flat, if you want to look at it that way, or an A sharp and a C sharp. And then we get into this chord. B. No, it doesn't matter what kind of B this is. It could be a B minor or it could be a B7, but I suspect it's a B minor. From here we go up to a C. The C then moves into a B7. And then we move into G7 chord, 7th in the bass. So he then repeats this. This is where things get really interesting because Villa-Lobos now really separates out the polychords and starts to put in some really crunchy harmony above the G and B strings. Up until this point, all I've been using is my second and third fingers to move down and my first finger on the F. That's important. Why? Because from this B chord, we're going to use our third finger to slide up to the 5th fret, and then our 4th finger on to play the B flat. And then we're going to slide up my third, very important for this study. So I have 4th finger, 3rd finger, 1st finger, and then it slides up a tone to E flat before Villa-Lobos finally lets us release on the G, which is the next microstudy. So taking that all together, this is what microstudy 14 should look like as block chords. Main thing to keep in mind here, when we hit these chords here, your thumb is going to have to roll through 1, 2, 3 bass strings, and you need to keep them all even so that you don't hear nice and even. And then this time it rolls through 2 bass strings because you lift your I and A fingers up, and then you stay there like that. The second thing to point out is the melody is here. Welcome to microstudy number 15, the end. This is a lovely end to this piece. There is a lot of thumb work here, so I'm just going to dive straight in. He ends with a lovely high G. Remember, Villa-Lobos was a cellist, and so we get a lot of cello lines and cello ideas here, and this is one of them. Harmonics on the 12th fret on D, G and B. Now to begin with, because of the position I'm in from having moved up from this chord, your third finger is an anchor, it stays down from that chord. The goal here is to try and get this G popping out. Once you've done it the first time, change it to a second finger to do it the second time, because that second finger is going to move down to a B for the next bar. And then once you've done that full roll chord, my advice to you is to plant your A on the E string to keep you steady for main things here. Thumb is playing the melody. I have changed it from what Villa-Lobos has suggested. Thank you for staying to the end. That is the final bit of Etude number 4. Again, this is all part of the Villa-Lobos 12 and 12 challenge. 12 etudes across 12 months. The next etude is going to pop up, number 5. It's a fantastic etude, very Brazilian. It's what Villa-Lobos called one of his Amazonic studies.